Everyone for participating at tonight's Stop Agent Hate virtual rally. We're going to start tonight's program. Tonight's event is organized by Alliance of Chinese American of San Diego and APAPA San Diego. My name is Sunny Rickard. I'm the president of Alliance of Chinese American San Diego, and I will be the moderator of tonight's event. The purpose of tonight's rally is to continue the dialogue on the rise of AAPI hate crimes across the United States. To provide the city and the county leaders of San Diego a platform to interact with the constituents on policies, measures, and tools to combat AAPI hate crimes. We have invited the leaders from the city, from the county, and our own API communities. And tonight we have a very, very special guest, and he is the first person of color and LGBTQ person to become the mayor of San Diego. Prior to be elected the mayor, he was the second person of Filipino heritage ever elected to the California State Assembly, where he was the majority whip and the vice chair of LGBTQ caucus. And prior to that, in 2008, he served as a San Diego City Council member for the 3rd District, which included 2 terms as a City Council president and the city's interim mayor. Mayor Gloria strive to make our city a better place for all of us. As a mayor, he's working to bring equity to all of our neighborhood, making housing more affordable, implement our climate action plan, and transform San Diego into not just a fine city, but truly a great city. It's really my great honor to introduce Mayor Gloria to give us the opening remark, and I promise you we'll have a Q&A session after Mayor's remark. So Mayor Gloria, welcome.
Sunny, thank you so much for that introduction, and good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining this evening. I want to thank the Alliance and APAPA for bringing us together, and all of you for spending some time together tonight at a moment when I know our community is hurting. And Sunny, I appreciate it, your introduction, because as we've discussed this issue of AAPI hate, I want to explain to everyone how deeply personal this is for me. As you mentioned, I'm the first person of color, the first Filipino American elected to be mayor of this great city. To my knowledge, the only AAPI man in leading a major American city at this moment in our country's history. And so as this opportunity has been afforded to me, it's also a responsibility to speak out about what's occurring in our community. And I think one of the things that many of the reporters who've asked me about this situation that I've had the opportunity to comment on is a recognition that while this is getting a lot of attention currently, and we know that this uptick in violence is driven by the pandemic that we find ourselves in, our community is no stranger to hate, bigotry, and violence. And I think about my own grandfather, who is the Filipino in our history, in our family, who in his entire life, I never saw him in anything other than a suit. That would include times when he would mow the lawn, on family holidays, on weekends. He would always be present in his 3-piece suit. And as a kid, I just thought he was kind of strange. But as I grew up and grew older and understood how complex and sometimes how hateful our world is, I recognized that that suit was how he communicated to San Diego that he was a man. And that because for most of his life, he wasn't treated as a man. He wasn't treated as a member of this community, and he was excluded and discriminated against and harmed by this community that his grandson now leads. And that his only way that he could communicate that he was worthy of respect was by his clothes. And that was a story. He passed away just a couple of years ago. That was a story that was relevant and true in this city just a short while ago. And then today, that same sort of hatred, bigotry, and violence is playing out against members of our elder community, against businesses in our community, in the presence of vandalism and graffiti in our community, and it has to stop. And so as the mayor of this great city, even with that personal connection, I think it's extremely important for everyone here tonight to hear me say that hate has no place in this city, that violence and bigotry and prejudice against members of any community will not be tolerated. And to the extent that these violent acts become acts of crime, they will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. many of you, I'm sure, are wondering, what are we doing in this particular time to combat all of this? And I appreciate the chance to give a couple of quick updates. Some of you were with me and Councilmember Chris Kate, as well as our police chief and our district attorney just a few days ago in the Convoy district, when we walked door to door to businesses in the community, helping to educate them about the differences between a hate crime and a hate incident, the ways that you can report this either directly to law enforcement or through other community channels, to how to we welcome and encourage people to report this. I think that while this is getting a great deal of attention currently, I think many of us are honest with ourselves in knowing that many of these crimes go unreported, and that we have to encourage one another as well as ourselves to step up and speak out when this happens, recognizing that if we don't, the next victim might not that we might feel some responsibility for the next person that perpetrator might take action against. I tell you, beyond that, our city council has passed 2 resolutions denying hate and racism in our community. Working with the Stop AAPI hate organization, we have placed a reporting tool on the city's website, which is sandiego.gov. Our city's Human Relations Commission is meeting regularly to try and understand the ways that we can be innovators, not just to respond in this issue, but to be leaders in addressing hate in the community. I've hosted a town hall meeting with our city attorney, who is directly responsible for prosecuting misdemeanor hate crimes. And my API advisory committee, which is similar to my Black advisory committee, is working now to try and identify additional ways that we can work together. There are a multitude of other things that we're doing in this city. We are currently standing up our first office of race and equity in the city. And while that was born out of the movement to demand and acknowledge that Black Lives Matter, this office is fully inclusive of all the diversity of the city. And we are currently recruiting for the executive director of that particular part of the city. And I encourage folks to apply for the positions in that office, which are currently being recruited. We're also working to find other ways to address the hate in the community by addressing the systemic causes of it. I recognize that a lot of this behavior is happening because our community is hurting, not just our API community, but our city as a whole as we deal with the pandemic and the financial crisis that resulted from it. And so whether that's a heavy investment in youth programming this summer to occupy our young people, to give them summer jobs and things of that nature, to investing in nonprofit organizations that are intended to divert crime and prevent it before it happens, our city is trying to get to the root causes of this issue, not just to respond to it. I could go on, but I want you to know very clearly our city is doing what we can, and we know that we can always do more. And evenings like tonight are opportunities for you to share with me what the ways you think that we can do more to address and respond to the hate that's happening, to the crimes that are happening, but also to address the root causes of it and ways to try and to prevent it. And so I'm here tonight with an open mind, an open ear, and an open heart to make sure that, again, as someone who feels this hatred personally, that I'm doing everything that I can, not only to address it, but to make you proud and to make our city a leader when it comes to trying to address this hate in the community. To anyone who's been directly affected, I encourage you to report this to law enforcement. If for some reason you don't feel comfortable with reporting to law enforcement, I hope that you'd contact my office. We're happy to work with you directly. But at the end of the day, I want us this horrible situation to bring our community together, make us stronger, and have us work to fight to address the other systemic ways that our community is harmed, whether that's in housing discrimination, in educational disparity, economic disparity. Maybe this can be an opportunity for the empowerment of our AAPI community, and we can take this horrible time in our community's history and make it somehow better. Sonny, I appreciate the opportunity to share those opening comments. I know there are a number of questions that people have. I'm happy to answer any that are on people's minds tonight. Again, it's truly an honor to be here, and I thank the Alliance and APAPA for creating this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Mayor Gloria. As for now, we have over 122 attendees, and truly shows that this is an issue that many of us feel very personal. And thank you so much, Mayor, for sharing personal experience, family stories, and providing insight on how the city of San Diego will fight these racially motivated crimes and attacks, and how to unite our communities together, especially the underrepresented communities. And Mayor, you mentioned that we should important to mobilize our young people. I think that in the wake of Atlanta shooting, we have seen unprecedented mobilization among the API communities, people gathered online on the street to get their voice heard. And I think the highlight of this is really the young people are mobilized. And today we have actually a high schooler. His name is Aiken Wang from Westview High School. And at the tender age of 16, he's already a veteran organizer. He's one organizer of Stop Asian Hate 500 Miles Challenge. And we're going to give him a very special treatment. And he's going to represent the young people to ask you, Mayor, directly a question that he has. There you go, Aiken, you're on.
So first, I'd like to thank ACA for giving me this opportunity, and I'd like to thank Mayor Gloria for listening. So that being said, Nelson Mandela once remarked that both hatred and tolerance are taught, not inherited. As a high schooler, I've noticed that education on the history of anti-Asian racism in our public school system usually goes uncovered. Tolerance isn't being taught. Will you do anything to change that?
Again, thank you for that question. Well, I've tried. I will tell you, as mayor, we don't, or I don't have direct oversight or jurisdiction of our schools. But as mayor, I have a pretty big bully pulpit, right? A large platform from which to advocate. Probably the way I was most helpful in this is during my time in the state legislature, because it's our state legislature, along with our school boards, that really address the curriculum and what gets taught and what doesn't get taught in our classrooms. You may know that these have been some fairly controversial bills. I voted for AB 1460, which speaks to teaching this in the college environment at CSUs, and then AB 331, which teaches this in the high school. I voted for both of those bills. These are difficult bills. Their implementation are hard, but basically what it says is that we have to teach the full of the ethnic diversity of this state. Devil's always in the details, Aiken. And so this is a place where some of your activism, these chops that you're learning by speaking out, which I love, we can pass these bills in the legislature, but how that gets transmitted into textbooks, into lesson plans, that's often a question. And so I would encourage you to be active at your school board, to be active with our superintendent of public instruction and our State Department of Education as they authorize textbooks, curriculums, to make sure they're fully representative. And I think this is particularly important for our API community. As you well know, we're a very, very, very diverse community, right? And that Chinese history is not necessarily inclusive of Japanese or of Filipino or of Pacific Islanders. So my point is that the ability to simplify or to exclude portions of our community is really important. So stay focused on those things. Let me know if you see ways that I can use my platform to advocate further. And just know that I may be the first API mayor, but I ain't looking to be the last. And if you're learning these activism roots at your age, I'm very hopeful that maybe you could follow me someday in public office.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. That's a great, and hope for the young people stand up. As the mayor said that, it certainly is not the last API community on the school board or on the city council or on the elected office. And thank you, Aiken, for standing up and getting involved in the movement, being the active on this kind of activism and promote our value and our seat at the table. And as the mayor said, you're the future leader, and we are looking forward to have you that bring us this bright future. And we have many pre-submitted questions that our audience would like to ask our mayor. So we have a selected few, and our participants also can use the Zoom's Q&A button to submit your questions live. And this question is from Season Shi, Simon Su, and ninth grader Ethan Wu. The question is, given increased attention between the US and China, are there any kind of governmental measures in place to help remove these humiliating labels of Chinese virus from Asian communities, especially the Chinese Americans, and protect our community members and reinforce a safe, friendly, and more inclusive environment in schools, at home, and at work?
Well, yes, there are ways. I can tell you that our city council passed a resolution denouncing this last summer. The county passed a similar one just a few weeks ago. And those are symbolic in nature, but I recognize that they do have power, given that the the origin of these terms really came from one person, right? And the voters of this country dealt with that last November. We now have leadership that doesn't utilize those terms, and I think that that's healing and important. And while that may be at the national level, again, these resolutions at the local level sort of speak to this. But Sunny, I have to tell you, I was very dismayed the other day. I was going to City Hall, and some of you may know there's a COVID testing site about a block from City Hall, a drive-through site. And there's signage all around our building directing drivers to it. And one of the signs that says COVID testing with an arrow had been vandalized to say, well, you know what it said, virus that way. And I'll tell you that one of my team members, who's a member of the API community, took it upon himself to go down and personally remove that. That he found some cleaning equipment and got it done, because leaving it up even a second means not just more eyes seeing it, but from my perspective, that a young person like Aiken could see that and get the message to them that that's acceptable in the city. Sonny, it's just a small example, but I think it's radically different than what you've seen over the last year, where you had the most powerful person in this country repeating this terminology over and over again, and knowing those words matter and how they emanate and trickle down to other people's sick minds and how they act upon that. I hope that that staff member who took it upon himself, and you can imagine doing that on behalf of his family, who probably received similar treatment as my grandfather received. You can imagine how powerful that was for him to do that. And I share that with you just to know how personally committed we are to trying to address these acts of vandalism and hate that communicate a climate in this that it is not, as mayor of the city, am I anything I'm willing to accept. Beyond that, one of the things I do think is a ray of hope in this space, Sunny, is that law enforcement is very active around this. Again, our district attorney and our city attorney and our police chief have all made clear, if given any of these cases, they will prosecute them vigorously. But let's have some hope that just a couple of days ago, a member of our own community, Rob Bonta, was sworn in to be our state attorney general. That makes him literally the top cop, the top law enforcement officer in the state of California. You can imagine how he will choose to engage on these cases if they're presented to him for prosecution. And I just give you a sense of how radically different this year is compared to last year. And hopefully you'll start seeing that in the way that people who choose to do this will be treated, and that will cause others who start to think about doing this kind of stuff pause and prevent them from ever doing it, because they don't want to see the kind of harsh treatment that will be brought upon those who choose to act this way.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm glad you bring up that actually the DA and the San Diego PD is a big part of this. And actually, we later on going to have representatives from the DA's office and SDPD to answer some questions and give us some insights on the policy wise. And also that, Mayor, I have another question. This question is from Kailu, Tracy Wu, and me. There are about 34% actually Asian and Pacific Islanders residing in San Diego in the city. Yet we have not seen the level of attacks against the Asian Americans like the other cities of New York and San Francisco. What do you think that, why is that, and what have done differently that, to temper down those kind of attacks and crimes in the city of San Diego?
Sonny, it's a good question. I've thought a bit about that. But honestly, the answer I come back with is that I'm afraid that they are occurring, just people aren't reporting them. And I recognize that can be any variety of reasons, that we, some of these folks might be folks with immigration status that causes them to feel like they can't come forward. Some of them may feel like they're not going to be treated with seriousness or with the response that they hope for. I'm fearful of the reasons why people may choose not to come forward to report this stuff. And that's a part of why I wanted to be here tonight. And again, I appreciate this opportunity. I'm hopeful that if the mayor of San Diego is sitting there saying, this is serious, this is important, and we want you to report it, I'm hopeful that those who may have something happen, whether it's happened in the past or may happen to them in the days or weeks or months ahead, that they'll feel comfortable enough to come forward. Again, my fear in this regard, not only is that people are afraid to report, but when they don't report, the person that did something to them is allowed to go on to do additional acts against others. And so I would appeal to people's concern for others. I recognize a lot of us will just take all of us experience something in our lives, right? And we're just maybe sort of grin and bear it. But I have to encourage you to think about it from a stance of, if this is an act of violence, you may be able to withstand it, but others may not, right? Or the next time it could be more violent and more acute. So I don't feel like I've answered your question directly, Sunny. I've, to the extent that other communities have seen more horrific things, clearly we've been fortunate not to have something like what happened in Atlanta here happen here. Um, but I am aware of a couple of incidences that range from assault to vandalism. And one of these things is more than I can tolerate in this city, or more than I'll accept. And again, I'm afraid to know how much more there may be, but I want to encourage those who may be experienced anything to come forward. And last thing I would say is that, from venues like this is not the first time I've had an opportunity to speak with community groups about this issue. As I mentioned before, Councilmember Kate and I were in the Convoy District just a few days ago. I know our police department has, again, personally walked the Convoy District, the Little Saigon District, Mira Mesa, trying to get the word out. And I think that much in the way that some of this hate got started because of some offhand comments from our previous president, I think that when you see the police chief speaking about this, the DA speaking about this, city council members, the mayor speaking about this, it sends a message about what this community will tolerate. And again, it's my sincere hope that those who entertain these kinds of hate and prejudice may want to do something, but they recognize that it's not going to fly here, that we will find them, we'll prosecute them.
It's great. Yeah, it is very important for all of us kind of reporting to get our voice heard. And I think it's a sentiment. It's definitely the best way to deter and reduce the crimes, the attacks against Asian Americans. And Mayor, you said that actually the last year's rhetoric during the pandemic actually deepened some bias against Asian Americans. But, actually, I think many of us will feel that sentiment toward Asian Americans that you do not belong, that's really not new to the API communities. So as a mayor, do you have authority actually set up fundings or programs to organize community, to organize an event to educate and address this Asian hate and the biases? And if you do, and what kind of program you have in your mind?
Well, I've already mentioned a couple of things, right? These symposiums that we've had, these district walks that we've had. But I'll tell you, I'm proud of our city for the way that we do invest, whether it's in the cultural programming that happens, everything. And mind you, in the last year, we have not had a lot of this, obviously, because of the stay-at-home order. But everything from our Tet festivals to our Lunar New Year's to our Phil-Am Fest, these are often at city properties, often with support from the city in various forms. I recognize, I know with a group of leaders the other day who want more support, and I hear you. We're going to work on that. But there's that ways. But Sunny, think even beyond that. Think about our international cottages, where we have long had cultural offerings there to try and, to your point, relate to people on a human sense, to have them understand that this is a culture worth celebration, and worthy of integration and inclusion. So whether it's the thematic district in downtown, the Little Saigon district on El Cajon Boulevard, you see the city systematically investing in, creating spaces, naming, proclaiming, officiating these events, these properties, these buildings that I think communicate the kind of inclusion that we would hope for. But Sonny, the fact of the matter is you're exactly right. There is systemic racism, structural racism, embedded feelings that people have within their families that they pass down through generations, and they get ingrained about what is acceptable. I think what has been different in recent history is saying things that might have gone unsaid and saying them out loud, and therefore making them somehow acceptable in the public realm. And that's what I think has been particularly toxic about a lot of the characterization of our API community in the context of the pandemic. Mind you, the hate in someone's heart is horrible. It's bad, right? But when it's empowered and it's said somehow that that's acceptable in polite society, in public, or that even to go further, that it goes beyond words, but then starts going to actions, whether it's vandalism, physical assaults, or murder, all of that's bad, right? And that's, I think, one of the difference. But you can count on the city to continue to invest in these cultural programs through our arts and culture organization. Right now we're expanding the cottages and internet in Balboa Park. Everything from the Japanese Friendship Garden to our thematic district downtown. There are a multitude of ways. And again, I humbly put out there, to your point about the percentages, the API community is a big part of this city. And I think sometimes our observation is that our size is not necessarily represented in the cultural offerings. go find an API person statue in the city. You're not going to probably find too many, right? And then I would say humbly, from a political perspective, there's Chris Kate and there's me. So we need to be present in our cultural programming, in our built environment, in our political offices, in positions of leadership. And maybe that's one of the things, if I can get a quick plug in, Sunny, one of the things the mayor can do is appoint people to boards and commissions. These are the organizations that help govern the city or help advise the city council and the mayor. Some of you, I see some faces on the screen, already serve on those. But for those of you who might be here tonight, if you're here tonight, the 150 some odd people who are here watching this tonight, if you're here, it tells me that you care deeply about civic society, in civic life in this city. And I'd encourage you to maybe take it the next step and perhaps apply for a position on our Human Relations Commission, a position on our Parks and Recreation Board, on our library, on our Arts and Culture Commission. These are the organizations that often determine programming, that provide the grants to fund some of these things. These are important positions. And there's an old saying in politics, Sonny, you may have heard it. If you're not at the table, you're on the menu. We need to be at the table a lot more if we want to have the kind of power that our numbers suggest that we should have.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I think this is a great point that if we're not on the table, then we are the menu. We're not sitting on the table, we're the menu on the table. So I think you mentioned that we have actually the Human Relations Commissions, Park and Recreation Commissions, and I think that you are recruiting executive director of this new the Office of Race Commission. That's what you mentioned. Yeah. And definitely we can help you to spread the words out and among our members.
That'd be great.
You're right that we really have to more people serve on the committees, and that's a great influence of can change the policies and change the dialogue, that change the tone of the city. And I just have one more question. I know that your time is very precious. That we actually have a Q&A from the audience. This is from Sue K. He said that we have signed petitions, protested, and raised the fund to place Stop Agent Hate signs throughout the community. Can the city allow some funds to use to put on a huge billboard sign along the freeway to rally for Stop Agent Hate? Is it possible that the city can allocate some funds to do that?
Well, the city has a pretty significant budget deficit. So that means, but here's my promise, Sunny. I know Michaela Volk from my team, who, by the way, when we're talking about the future leaders of this city, keep an eye on Michaela. She's Filipina. She's incredible. And she's a very important member of my team. She's our director of community engagement. Michaela, I know, can hear my voice. Michaela, let's follow up tomorrow. Sunny, while the city isn't necessarily going to write a check to do that, what we can do is call the billboard companies and ask, you often see public service messages on their billboards, like, no tobacco or, health screenings or something like that. We can often ask them to do that, and we'll see. I'll make a call. I'll be happy to make a call and see if they would maybe willing to donate some of their space. And that's better, right? Free is better than cheap. So let them pay for it, and let's keep the city money flowing to those summer jobs for our kids and more money for some of this law enforcement efforts to stop this kind of violence against our community.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Thank you for helping us this people's petition, this audience petition. I know that your time is very, very precious. I know that we can only imagine how much demands on your time. So I know that you need to leave at 7:30. So we're a minute ahead of the schedule. So we thank you again.
You're incredible. Thank you for keeping me on time. Yeah, there's a lot of demands, but this was very important for me to be here tonight. You have to hear, regardless if I'm part Filipino or not, this is important to your mayor. The leader of this city knows this is an issue. I know our community's hurting. I know many of you are fearful for yourselves, for your family, and for your children. And the fact that you feel that way motivates me to do more in this space. So this is not the end. If you think of something, I see Michaela's dropped her email in the chat. Please take it down. We welcome your good ideas, not just for this current situation we find ourselves in now, but more ways that we can make sure that the people of our entire city understands that we cannot call ourselves America's finest city if we did not have a vibrant AAPI community. I look forward to working with you all for many years to come to make sure our city is more equitable, and that includes making sure that our Asian Pacific Islander community is at the table, contributing and helping to make the city a better place. So Sunny, again, thank you to you, the Alliance, APAPA, and everyone for making this opportunity possible, and I ask everyone to stay in touch and be safe.
Thank you so much, Mayor Gloria, for finding time from your busy schedule attending this event. I'm sure we'll see you again in the future discussions. Thank you again, Mayor. We'll see you. See you soon. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.